When you look back on this 25 years of Serie A, Grell, what would you say is the defining moment or theme of this time in Serie A?
Defining moment or theme? It's gone through a lot, right? It went through Calciopoli, then obviously Italy won the World Cup in that time. Right after that, it's gone from being one of the best leagues in the world to maybe going a little bit stale and Juventus dominating the league, and now it's somewhere in between where we have a new winner every week. Where we don't know who's going to win it. It's definitely, though, always been a league for me that tactically is at the highest level, history-wise at the highest level, culture-wise at the highest level. For me, it's always been my favorite league in the world, and the league I learned the game through. I grew up watching that league, and I think it's really an entertaining league that you can learn a lot from if you watch week in and week out.
The incredible ups and downs, the Phoenix rising from the ashes. It was one of the greatest league in the world in the 90s. In the 2000s, Milan went to the Champions League final 3 times. Obviously, Inter won in 2010. You had 3 teams in the semifinals in 2003. Then Calciopoli in 2007, right after Italy won the World Cup, where it was like the height of Italian football. And it's been slowly building back up. And now you see Italian teams trying to build privately owned stadiums, trying to modernize, trying to really expand their marketing message globally. So we've been seeing a slow and steady rise since rock bottom in 2007. And it's definitely had growing pains. It's definitely had setbacks. But I think resiliency is a message of the league, and they really play on the nostalgia factor better than any other league. And right now, it's a very competitive product.
And I think new ideas. Like, I love when Gasperini was able to win finally with Atalanta, the Europa League, because that showed that he was called crazy many times with what he wanted to do. He said, when I was first in Italy, they would say, this is not how you're able to do things. I could even think back to Cesc Fabregas when he was promoted to Serie A. Capello sat him down. He said, it's great that you did this with Como in Serie B, but now you're in the big leagues. You can't attack the way that you attack. You can't defend the way that you attack. So we're in this transition period where there's a lot of new ideas, a lot of young coaches, and we're trying to, yes, we're very good tactically and we're very good defensively, but I think Italy is in a transition period to also modernize and try to catch up with the rest of the world where they are attacking-wise.
Yeah, and then hopefully see that result in more success in Europe as well, because we have seen some Italian teams come really close over the last 25 years as well. Okay, well, let's talk about some of the best players over the last 25 years. So each of you kind of went in your own directions with this one. So, Matteo, you're going to kick us off with who you think your best player of the last 25 years of Serie A has been.
Ricardo Isaacson dos Santos Leite, better known as Kaka. 2007, won the Champions League, won the Ballon d'Or. He had 2 to 3 years where even Ronaldinho said he was the best player in world football before the injuries that really set back his career at Real Madrid. But when he was at the top, I have never seen a player move faster with the ball than without it. The way that he could just split the line so effortlessly. He was so elegant and graceful in full flight. He was running full speed and he quickly turned directions. His vision, his pace, his finishing ability. He was scoring 17 to 19 goals a season. And his Champions League displays in the 2006-2007 season are one of the greatest that I've ever seen from a footballer in my life. So that player from like 2005 to 2007, best footballer in the world, won everything, gave me so many joys as a fan before I got into this industry. So I have to go with Kaka.
I love it. Okay, Grell, you're next.
For me, it was Francesco Totti. I think of always the 3 guys of Baggio, Totti, Del Piero, the guys that make you really want to play football when you're a kid. Like, so creative, so cool with the headband, the Diodoras. What he represented, I think, for Rome as well. Never left. Real Madrid wanted him. Some of the biggest clubs in the world wanted him. Then he got to win the World Cup. He did the first time I've ever saw a cucchiaio on TV, which is the little chip penalty down the middle against Holland. He's just such a cool guy. Scored so many goals too, by the way, from that position. He was a number 10 that would drop in pretty deep. He didn't play always high to the goal. He affected the game in so many ways. Scored 250 goals for Roma in 619 appearances. I don't know of many players that had sort of the bottom line factor and played that sort of creative number 10 role as well as he did.
There was like some argument, right, in the green room. Somebody wrote Totti or I don't remember the other player.
Wayne Rooney was up there, yeah.
And you think if Totti went to Real Madrid, which Real Madrid was begging him, he would have had all the Champions League. He would have had all the accolades. And I think maybe the general, not us, but general fans would look back at Totti on a different level because what he did with the ball at the feet, I mean, you couldn't even believe it. But he loved Rome. He dedicated his life to the one club because for him, he always said, you win 1 Scudetto with Roma, it's like winning 10 with a northern club.
Marco, that's one of the best points you've ever made. If Totti was a mercenary, like most players are, and just chased the money, he'd be seen as one of the greatest players of all time. He's not in that conversation because he's stuck with his boyhood club his entire career, something that is extinct in the modern game. You don't see this kind of bandiera ever again.
No, great points. And, there's a lot to be said about staying with your boyhood club and everything that means to you personally and then for the fans of that club as well. But, Marco, you've got your pick. Who was it?
When we got the text for who you had to choose, the first name that came to my mind is Paolo Maldini. And you want to talk about connection to a club, the Maldini family and AC Milan, it's pure history. When you think about winning 5 Champions Leagues, 5 Champions League. 2 of them came when he was the captain of the club. He is the greatest defender that has ever lived. He had a phenomenal quote once that said, if I had to make a tackle, I already made a mistake, because that's how good he was on the ball, off the ball. He could do it all. And I always remember thinking back to UCL Today show when they've got Jamie Carragher, Henry, and Michael Richards, and they're all starstruck by one person. You don't see them get starstruck very often. And it's like they're speaking to Maldini and they can't believe it. That shows the respect that he gets. Also from the footballing level, he's a god, he's an icon. I love him, and he's a classy person because everything that he's done on the field and off the field, I really love Maldini. Okay,
so we did have 2 Ballon d'Or winners who didn't make the cut, and that was Shevchenko and Nedved. Any reason why those 2 didn't?
Cannavaro also, you could put in the conversation.
Yeah.
I think also it's important when we rank players or we talk about players that you have to calculate what they made you feel. And I think for me, Francesco Totti made me feel something different than maybe a Nedved or maybe Cannavaro in 2006 was incredible. But you look at the consistency and the body of the career, then it's hard to beat Totti.
Shevchenko has one of the most iconic moments of the 21st century for Serie A. And that's when he's going like this before he's taking the penalty on Buffon. And that penalty wins Milan the Champions League after they knocked out Inter in the semifinal and then beat Juventus on penalties in the final. I mean, for a fan of Milan, that is perfection.
Yeah.
You just knocked off your 2 biggest rivals in the semifinal and final of the Champions League. Euphoria.
All right. Well, that brings us now to our next superlative set, and that is the best coach of the last 25 years in Serie A. And 2 of you have the same answer, but we're going to start with the one who does not, and that is Marco Messina. So who is your pick?
Really? Surprise, surprise.
I bet I know this one.
Antonio Conte.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. The facts speak for themselves. What this man was able to do, he took over Juventus, who were just coming out of being in Serie B. The team finished 7th twice. He made Juventus win. Then what did he do? He went to Inter to tear down the Juventus cycle of winning 9 in a row and beat Cristiano Ronaldo and Juventus the first time that was broken and the first time that Inter won a Scudetto since the treble year. Then what has he done now in the modern era when we're talking about spanning over 25 years? He builds up Napoli and wins them a Scudetto to stop Inter, which he, by the way, built up. He also had with Juventus in his 3rd year 102 points in a league title. All the top 5 leagues, nobody has ever done 102 points. He's phenomenal at what he does. League play, there's no coach better in the world than him for me.
Okay. Grau? Matteo? Who wants to start
We
first?
chose the same, so it doesn't really matter.
Carlo Ancelotti.
Of course.
Carlo Ancelotti, amazing manager, maybe the best manager in the world at dealing with superstars, dealing with egos, knowing how to keep the players on the same page, the Champions League god. And it should have been more. You think of the disaster of 2005 when they had a 3-0 lead at halftime, then Liverpool comes back and they win on penalties. Milan really in their history should have won more than they did in the Champions League. I thought they were a little bit unlucky, but Carlo Ancelotti is an absolute immortal as a manager. Mike?
Yeah, and it just as a former player, I'd rather play for Ancelotti than I would Antonio Conte. Obviously, Conte demands a lot more physically, I think. Not that Ancelotti doesn't, but Ancelotti has a method of managing that's just really chill and really cool. And after he wins with Real Madrid, there's that iconic picture of him smoking a cigar with the players and hanging out. And there's an aura and something special about him. There's something intangible, like you can't just see it. You know, we kind of know what Antonio Conte does. We have an idea. There's a lot of Juventus DNA in what he does with the discipline and the running and the hard, you know, the tactical understanding that he has of the game. Ancelotti's sort of like, you don't really know what makes him so great.
He doesn't overmanage. Like look at Xabi Alonso now with Real Madrid.
Yeah.
He doesn't overmanage.
So just really cool. Really, both great managers, but Ancelotti really cool.
Here's a look at some more numbers from the last 21st century in Serie A and some of the top top performers. Francesco Totti is the top goal scorer with 214 goals. Massimiliano Allegri, the winningest manager with 6 league titles. And that 2011-2012 Juventus team is the only team to go unbeaten, 23 wins and 15 draws. So as we continue our look back on these last 25 years, each of you earlier today picked your best player, your best manager, and now you each are picking your best team from the last 25 years. And lots of great ones to choose from, Grell, but which one did you go with?
We all picked 3 very good teams. We're going to start with the 2014-15 Juventus side. This side went to the Champions League final, only lost to Barcelona, but this side played, for me, the best football. They were fantastic. Pirlo spraying the ball all over the place. They had Tevez in that team as well. They had the midfield, Marchisio, Vidal, Pogba, and Pirlo was, for me, the best midfield that I've seen Juventus have in a really long time, and they played some really good football. So for me, that was my favorite team to watch play, and the way they competed against the biggest teams in Europe was always fun.
And then we'll take a look now at the lineup. But any thoughts on this? Was this one that was close for either of you, Marco, Matteo?
It's what I chose yesterday when we did our segment on the best Juventus. This team balanced talent because there's clear talent on this team, but they had a grit about them. They had a nastiness.
Bonucci, I forgot to mention that trident in there.
BBC.
Yeah.
We were talking about the back.
And Barzagli, by the way, is on the bench here. So in certain games, they could go with Barzagli. So they had an ability to shape themselves wherever they were. The only real lack for me was the number 9 position, was Morata. He did score a couple of big goals, but to be able to take them over the line, to beat the Barcelonas, to beat the Real Madrids, I think they needed that little extra push. But certainly in the midfield, it's one of the best midfields I've ever seen. And it was their ability to punch above their weight, especially in games like that, where it showed to the world that Juventus was back. Juventus was going to be a team that fights, that competes, and that could prosper up really good players, because Pogba was nothing before he went to Juventus.
I think it was also the last time they played really well.
Juventus kept Serie A relevant in the 2010s because that was the decade where Milan and Inter weren't even finishing. It was called the banter era for both teams. They weren't even finishing in the Champions League spot. Juventus were single-handedly keeping Serie A on the map by going twice to the Champions League final. They just had the misfortune of facing 2 generational La Liga teams. I mean, they went up against one of the greatest Barcelona teams of all time. They were the massive underdogs in that game. So really, that was the only thing that prevented this team from being a generationally great team that you look at as one of the true greats of all time, not just the 21st century.
Do you think this team would beat Bonetti's team? Do you think it is the best in the last 25 years, though?
No, I think that probably your teams are better.
Okay.
But this was your favorite to watch.
Well, I asked about which teams were available.
We couldn't pick the same teams. That was a bit of a
Listen, you could make the argument that this team could compete with the teams we're about to hear about.
They wouldn't concede. It's hard to break this team down.
Yeah. Okay. Matteo, what was your team? What was your team that I guess Grella thinks is better than
I think we all 3 agree that the team that I chose, I just happened to, I think, send my submission in before these guys. But we all picked this team. 2002-2003 Milan beat Inter in the Champions League semifinal, beat Juventus Champions League final on penalties. But the difference to me between this team and that Juventus team of the 2010s is that Juventus team had world-class players. This Milan team had generational players, players that don't come around for 20, 30, 40 years, players that you might never see again, multiple Ballon d'Or winners throughout this entire era of Milan, where they went to the Champions League final 3 times in the span of 5 seasons under the great Carlo Ancelotti. But what they did in the Champions League final, it wasn't really what they did domestically, it's what they did in Europe. And just look at this team. Maldini and Nesta at the back. Costa Curta, a legend who just was overshadowed by all the greatness, but he was a great defender too. The midfield, prime Pirlo, prime Gattuso, Clarence Seedorf, who won Champions Leagues at multiple clubs. A legend like Rui Costa in the number 10 role. The Portuguese was one of the finest trequartisti that we've had in the 21st century. Maybe the greatest poacher of all time in Filippo Inzaghi, excuse me, and Andriy Shevchenko. Shevchenko, of course, a Ballon d'Or winner. Kaka was still yet to come into this team. He was still very young when he joined the year after, I believe, but Kaka would come later into this team. But it was Rui Costa in that number 10 role. This team is world-class everywhere you look.
How do you think a team from this era of Serie A would match up against a team today, stylistically?
I mean, these guys were dogs. That's the thing. I think the big difference here, if we compare the Juventus that we just had on the screen, defensively, they would both compete. You could make the argument either way, but it was an attack. They had these superstar players that could win you a game on their own. We saw the stat of Inzaghi had 30 goals. 30 goals in all competitions is something incredible. Obviously, when you talk about these players, I think that this team would win.
In these times, by the way, Inzaghi was like third all-time Champions League goal scorer. This is before the Messis, the Ronaldos, and Haaland destroyed the record books. But Inzaghi was one of the guys who had the most European goals at the time.
Yeah, incredible. Okay, Marco, you're next.
Yes, I love this team. This is Inter's treble-winning team, 2009, 2010. Jose Mourinho, they did what many people thought was unthinkable. They beat the Barcelona with Messi and with Pep Guardiola. And I mentioned before that Milan team were dogs. This team was. They found a way to win in every game that they competed in. And I think 2010, it's the last time that we've had an Italian winner in the Champions League. Diego Milito. What Diego Milito did that year, I've never seen somebody have a magical season like Diego Milito has. It's one of those moments in my memory that everything the man touched went in. The goal against Bayern Munich in the final, just to hesitate and then put the ball into the back of the net, pretty much summed up that they were cold-blooded killers. Wesley Sneijder, brought in from Real Madrid. People thought that he would be washed. I think he should have won the Ballon d'Or in that season. And then Jose Mourinho in his one last dance with Inter, because then he moved on to Real Madrid after that. This team was filled with character. They were filled with incredible talent. And the deal that sealed it all was getting Eto'o. They got rid of Ibrahimovic. Many people thought they were crazy. Barcelona and Guardiola were begging for Zlatan. They made an incredible moment. They got Eto'o. That partnership up top was incredible.
You know, this wasn't the most talented team. This was the meanest team, I think, of the 21st century. They really embodied Jose Mourinho. Look at what they did in that game against Barcelona. They had like 18% possession. They couldn't hold on to the football. They still won. The Wall, Samuel, and Lucio that season were terrific. Maicon was one of the great right backs in his prime of this entire century. The experience of the tractor, Zanetti, Cambiaso keeping everything calm. Sneijder was so good that year. But Marco's right. Milito that year, the cutback to score in the Champions League final, the brace that he had against Bayern Munich is one of the great memories I have of this century for an Italian club.
This square here, Cambiaso, Zanetti, Lucio, Samuel, Muro, that square is crazy. And then if you continue down the spine, Sneijder was incredible. And then Milito, the season he had. The rest of the players, yeah, obviously they were fantastic too. Eto'o, historic, generational talent. This was a nasty team to play against for sure.
The real fun argument would be, out of all the teams, because we might say that others were more talented, but I really think if they played, I think this team would win just because they found a way.
20% possession.